Back in March of 2020, the US government was hacked, massively. It involved the Pentagon, NSA, Department of Homeland Security, Treasury Department, the NTIA, which handles US internet policies, and likely many more. And nobody knew about it until 9 months later, in December. It's been called a nightmare scenario by cybersecurity experts. We still don't know all the damage it caused, but it's massive. But before that, our sponsor, World of Tanks. It's a massive online multiplayer PC game where you can play as any one of over 550 different tanks from the first half of the 20th century. This includes all the most famous ones to those I've never even heard of before. They also have a massive number of maps, including open fields, hills, forests, deserts, and urban environments. And it's extremely realistic in its damaging system. Some of your poorly placed shots will just ricochet off, or do no damage at all. Others you can cause critical damage and even demobilize your enemy. All this creates a real need for strategy, which I love, and the only type of game that I personally play. No cheap, unrealistic thrills, you have to outthink your opponents. And it's all free to play. You can have a lot of fun at no cost to you. So go down and click on the link in the description. New players will get 7 premium days, 500 gold, and a premium tank, the Soviet T-127, using invite code TANKTASTIC, no space. So go check it out and give it a try. Again, World of Tanks. The hack was extremely complex, something almost certainly impossible for any non-state actor group to do alone, meaning it was carried out by another sophisticated country. We know this because of the way it infected these agencies. Whoever was responsible did not just hack into these agencies, but hacked or some way inserted malware into a network management tool called SolarWinds. They did so in a way that when SolarWinds users updated their software, it included the malware. Now anybody who updated became infected without knowing. These types of attacks are called supply chain attacks, where the legitimate software or hardware you receive is already infected, making it extremely difficult, nearly impossible to detect and defend against. Not only do you have to be aware of direct attacks, but also every single last legitimate piece of hardware and software that you use. It's like in the TV shows or the movies where the FBI can't get into a criminal's house to bug it themselves, so they disguise themselves as exterminators or from the electric company to gain access. It all seems completely legitimate and creates no suspicion. The US right now is saying that it was Russia, and honestly, it likely was. Russia does this, so does China, so does the US. We know from Edward Snowden and other sources that the US uses supply chain attacks on a massive scale. They've even put hardware directly into products' firmware before they are shipped to the customers. Having them in the firmware nearly completely avoids all detection, and isn't removed when the device is wiped clean or reformatted. They were also revealed to work directly with some of the software companies who allowed them to place backdoors into their products so that they can get into them anytime they wanted. If you're interested, I suggest reading into something called the Equation Group. Just be careful what you click on while searching them. But this SolarWinds hack gave its creators massive access to some of the most highly secured US government agencies, including the NSA, which that Equation Group is almost certainly a part of. They were also reportedly able to steal offensive hacking tools that the NSA uses. Now, likely all those tools are useless for the US, and have to develop new ones from scratch. Cyberwarfare and espionage offers a brand new way to fight covertly. Previously, the best possible intelligence victory you might have is a high-level defector, like Oleg Penkovsky, or an inside source like Aldrich Ames. They can give you what they personally had access to, but that's it. Hacking into a network now could give you anything and everything, including the names of every last operation and spy they had working in your country. It's a goldmine. It's also difficult to identify the group or country behind it. If you catch a spy, you can interrogate them and figure out who they work for, but you can't do that with a few lines of code. You need forensic investigators to pick through the source code and find commonalities with past attacks and other intelligence you have. The NSA tends to have certain methods of writing and structuring code that could be identifiable, so does Russia, China, and everyone else. Another is a technique called a sinkhole, where you take control of the server and allow the malware to communicate back to its operator and track it back. Also, you can find other clues in files, such as timestamps. Just one of the many reasons experts attribute Stuxnet to the US was the timestamps on the files were all during normal work hours in the US, roughly 8 AM to 5 PM local time on the East Coast, Monday through Friday. Another major problem is what to do after you identify the attacker. Do you consider it an act of war, or just let it slide? Or maybe start your own retaliatory cyber attack? Or maybe somewhere in between, like when you expel suspected spies from your country or enact sanctions. There is no clear establishing rules on how to correctly react, so often the most focus is on simply trying to defend against them in the first place. Defending against cyber attacks in general is extremely difficult. They can come from anywhere, at any time. You have to be on guard everywhere, 24/7. It could be some extremely high-tech attack, or as simple as getting a low-level employee to click on a link in an email or from their social media account. Those are the most common and often the most difficult to defend against, as large organizations have to train and manage each and every employee to make sure that they don't ever make a single mistake. It could be the head of an organization, or even the janitor who logs into the Wi-Fi on their phone. Once you infect one device, you can more easily pivot into the rest of the devices on the same network, so it's very difficult to stop. One preventative measure is to compartmentalize information, not keeping all your eggs in one basket, as the saying goes. That way, if a hacker gets into one part, it doesn't have access to everything else. The problem with this, though, is it makes it very difficult to share information with agencies and departments that might need access to it. Another similar topic is security versus usability, which applies to all technology, even your cell phone. They are opposite ends of the spectrum. The most secure system in the world would be one that no one could ever access, in a vault buried deep underground. The most user-friendly would be one that anyone can access with a click. There's always a compromise made between the two. Having a password needed to get on your computer or phone, for example, or more secure with two-factor authentication, and on, making it more secure but less easy to use. Another unique defensive measure is to use a decoy. Just like a fighter jet might deploy chaff or flares to throw off an attacking missile. The US has discussed in the past creating entire fake networks ran with bots, with fake employees sending fake emails, logging in and out of computers, everything to make it look like the real thing. That way, if a nation did gain access, they might fall for this decoy thinking they have actually succeeded. You can then even feed them false information to throw them off, or possibly even include your own malware in files that look valuable to the attacker that they would steal. Now, I know I'm going to have comments further explaining these things, that I left stuff out or simplifying too much, but there are two main important terms when it comes to hacking that I want to mention: payload and exploit. The exploit is the way you get in. The payload is what you want to do once you're there. A talk that I attended a while back from David Kennedy, the founder of TrustedSec, described the exploit as being the snake bite, and the payload is the venom it injects. Most focus on defense has been on exploits. If you find a brand new way to get a piece of software to do something that it isn't supposed to, it's called a zero-day exploit. This means it's unknown, and therefore companies cannot develop a patch to prevent it. If you find a zero-day, you have a couple choices. Either notify the software developer so they can fix it, or you can sell it and get rich, either to a hacker group on the black market or even to a government, like the US, so they can use it. Depending exactly what it does, zero-day exploits can be extremely valuable as there's no defense against it yet. But this is why it's extremely important to always update all your software immediately, as updates often include patches to block new exploits found, despite the fact that the SolarWinds attack used the update server to infect computers and networks. In fact, in that case, the people who didn't update were not infected. One of the most famous cyber attacks was Stuxnet, which used a total of 4 of these zero-day exploits, and also possibly with cooperation from Microsoft when it was discovered that it utilized a Windows 7 update. It attacked Iranian nuclear facilities back in 2009, and was the first well-documented use of cyber warfare by a nation not at war. And since, cyber warfare and spying has only grown, and it puts virtually everything at risk. With both Stuxnet and this SolarWinds attack, many civilian organizations were infected as well. So even if it's not intended, there could be collateral damage. Whether intentional or not, entire communications infrastructures can be destroyed, including the internet that most companies rely upon. Industries could be damaged, power plants be shut down, the entire banking system offline, and all this could potentially be much worse than conventional warfare. People's life savings could be gone due to hacks on banks, blackouts due to power plants being hacked, maybe water too, food shortages due to supply chains going down, public transportation, everything is now potentially at risk. And again, there's no rulebook on how to respond to a cyber attack, unlike with a physical kinetic attack. And with the internet and computers not going away anytime soon, it's going to continue to get a lot worse.